All right, guys, we're going to start the show shortly today. Good Thursday afternoon to you. A lot to cover on today's program. The lead of today's show left me shocked, surprised, taken aback. Former Police Chief Dr. Rachel Brackney is a finalist for another police chief job. We'll tell you the nitty-gritty on today's program, the I Love CVille show. Today we will chatter on the program the plight of the Charlottesville Police Department, the difficulties facing the department in a press release issued yesterday that should have many in the community concerned. There are significant vacancies in this department to the point where the police are not responding to certain crimes and infractions. We will relay that to you today. I am going to compare and contrast the staffing issues with the Charlottesville Police Department to the staffing issues of the Charlottesville school system. The similarities are endless. We have more school bus driver news for you as well. And this news is very concerning. No need to open that door. We're going to have a lot of fun today on the program. We're going to talk Virginia football, Regal Cinemas closing, the Scottsville tire plant news. Yeah, Judy, will you close the door? A lot to cover on today's program. Let's rock and roll, Judah. Yeah. Judah, can you close the door so we can start the show? We're going to talk Virginia football and so much more on today's show. Give it a like, give it a share. Today's going to be a great time. Judah, I'm ready to rock and roll when you're ready.
Quiet on the set.
Good Thursday afternoon, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and welcome to the I Love CVille show. Thank you kindly for joining us on a glorious Thursday in downtown Charlottesville. Our show is broadcasted across the I Love CVille network, which includes an audience of Charlottesville, Central Virginia, the Commonwealth, the country, and the world. Today, we're presented by the Clifton, a fantastic boutique hotel in Keswick, Virginia, a hotel that has made dreams come true for so many brides and their families. The Clifton in Keswick, your choice for dinner, for date night, for live music, for happy hour, and to celebrate events that are memorable for you and your family. Today's program is going to be dynamite. I have so much content to relay to you, the viewer and listener, including Dr. Rachel Brackney, the former police chief of the city of Charlottesville, now a finalist for a new police chief job. Yes, the same police chief that is suing the city of Charlottesville for $10 million, claiming wrongful termination because she's a black woman. I'm going to ask you this question before I give you a tease of what's to come on today's show. Who do you think was the reference for Dr. Brackney for this new police gig? I can think of maybe one person in Charlottesville City Hall that could serve or would serve as a reference for Dr. Rachel Brackney. I'll explain who that person is, and I'm going to ask you this question in very straightforward fashion. only in 2022 can someone sue their former employer for $10 million, claiming wrongful termination for being a black woman, and then, months later, be a finalist for a police chief position in Minneapolis that is a larger market, a greater pay scale, and undoubtedly higher on the totem pole. It would be a vertical move if she got this job. That topic to lead the show. Today we will also cover the difficulties with staffing within the Charlottesville Police Department. I say this so many times on this show. I stand with the blue. I back the police. Few professions in life include risking your life, risking your health, risking the confidence of your family when it comes to you returning home from work. Few professions in life do you risk your life, your safety, and your health, and then get bombarded with hate by people in the community. That's the role of a Charlottesville Police Department officer. Yes, every police department has some bad apples. Just like every podcasting network has some bad apples, every advertising agency has some bad apples, every real estate firm has some bad apples, every banking industry has some bad apples. It's not unique to police. We will highlight a press release that came out yesterday from the Charlottesville Police Department. There are a number of crimes that the police department is no longer responding to. And it's not because we blame them. No, no, no. Instead, we blame the folks in this community who are disparaging the officers, driving them to outer counties for less stress, less headache, and more pay. It's time this changes, and we'll explain what should change and how. On today's program, we will discuss the comparisons between the Charlottesville Police Department and its staffing issues and the Charlottesville school system and its staffing issues. I will also relay a story from a mother in Albemarle County, eastern Albemarle County, a single mother in eastern Albemarle County who is routinely getting text messages and alerts from her school system, her elementary school, that their children's bus is going to be hour plus late arriving to school and almost 2 hours late getting home from school. That topic on today's show, along with an update from the Scottsville tire plant. Apartments are percolating in Scottsville, Virginia. The University of Virginia football travels to Illinois. The Wahoos, a 4.5-point underdog, a Saturday kickoff on ESPNU. Before we welcome our esteemed colleague, who undoubtedly is becoming a household name, Judah B. Wickower, I'd like to offer some takes on Rochelle Brackney. I'm having even a hard time saying this. Dr. Rochelle Brackney is a finalist for a new job in Minneapolis. She's one of 3 candidates for this job. Ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are watching, I'm going to set an accurate stage for you. And then I'm going to ask you to utilize common sense and reasoning in determining what the hell is going on. So here's the nitty-gritty. Dr. Brackney, formerly the police chief in the city of Charlottesville. Dr. Brackney had an unceremonious exit, pink slip, fired, canned, laid off from the city of Charlottesville. She lost the confidence of her department and rank and file team members. Dr. Brackney, in the process of losing the confidence of her department, was fired by interim city manager Chip Boyles just a handful of weeks before Chip Boyles resigned from the city manager post himself. After Brackney was fired, canned, pink-slipped, she said, "You know what? How I got fired wasn't fair. I'm going to hire an attorney from Johnny Cochran's law firm. An attorney who otherwise specializes in injury cases is going to represent me in a wrongful termination lawsuit." This attorney does some press conferences, gets the pomp and circumstance going, gets the news cycle buzzing, and lo and behold, Brackney says, "Give me 10 million smackaroos, Charlottesville taxpayers. I want $10 million of your money, Charlottesville citizens." The lawsuit, active as we speak. City Hall, they're looking to dismiss it. They're not even responding to Brackney's attorney. They're not even giving it the time of day as we speak. I ask you, the viewer and listener, how can someone who is suing their former employer for $10 million, claiming wrongful termination because she was fired as a black woman, her words, her attorney's words, a police chief who lost the confidence of the beat officers, of the sergeants, of the lieutenants, of the captains, of the rookies, of the administrative staff. How can this person now be on the short list, one of 3 finalists, for a job in a market that is larger than Charlottesville, that pays more money than Charlottesville? Ladies and gentlemen, only in 2022 would that be a reality. If I had explained this story over a cup of coffee or over a cold drink, you would have said to me, "This is laughable." But in the words of Lee Corso, not so fast, my friends. This is real life. In 2022, in the crazy political climate that we call Charlottesville, Virginia, and the United States of America, can a disgraced officer who got fired in the city of Charlottesville later sue the city of Charlottesville for $10 million, then become a finalist for a job in Minneapolis? If you're left scratching your head, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. This news was passed to me by nearly 100 viewers and listeners between yesterday and today. Our Facebook inbox is at the point of almost becoming unmanageable. Who is the only reference that you can think of that Brackney could utilize for this gig in Minneapolis? Probably not Chip Boyles. Probably not Heather Hill. Probably not Sina McGill, Michael Payne. Probably not Brian Pinkston, Juan Diego Wade. No, those references, they cannot be utilized because a lot of those folks I rattled off are named in the lawsuit. The only reference I can think of for Chief Brackney in her quest, her pursuit, her hunt for vertical rise with her employment is our former mayor, Nakia Walker, her lone ally in City Hall. Only in 2022, and in today's volatile political climate, can you sue your former employer for $10 million for wrongful termination, a lawsuit based on race and sex, and then months after the lawsuit, you're a finalist for a job in Minneapolis, a city that's larger and can pay more money. That, my friends, I find perplexing. Do you not find that equally as perplexing? Judah Wickower, let's go to the two-shot. Judah Wickower is our jack of all wits. $10 million lawsuit. Minneapolis is courting her.
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis. Whatever. Is courting her. What was your response when you read this?
I mean, I'm not as doubtful about this as unsure how this could happen. I mean, there's a reason that Charlottesville hired her. She clearly had something that we thought was worth bringing into our city, into our police department, and maybe that's something that Minneapolis is looking for as well. I mean, yes, she is suing Charlottesville, but she could end up winning. For all they know, she's in the right in that suit.
City Hall's looking to dismiss the case. They're not even responding to her.
I know that.
City Hall, Lisa Robertson, the attorney, our mayor's an attorney himself. They're not even giving her the time of day.
Yeah.
Haven't responded to her attorney. Literally ignoring her.
Right.
Police chief, would you say that's an important position for a city?
I'd say it's very important, especially for a city like Minneapolis, who's had some issues in the last few years.
Minneapolis, you would say the lightning rod or the catalyst for the Black Lives movement.
Very much so.
The Black Lives Matter movement. Minneapolis, right? The catalyst, right? Of BLM.
I wouldn't say of BLM, but it was certainly a sparking point in a couple years ago.
George Floyd was murdered, undoubtedly. Murdered by police officers, undoubtedly. I will never say on this microphone anything different. Floyd was murdered. You think Minneapolis is vetting Brackney's history?
I'm sure they are.
Here's what we know about Chief Brackney. While she was the police chief of the city of Charlottesville, she was a finalist for a job in Dallas, Texas, as the police chief. Now a finalist for a job in
Minneapolis.
If you were leadership, would you scratch your head and say, hey, there's an active $10 million lawsuit going on for one of the finalists for this position? Does that not seem like common sense?
I'm sure they're watching it. There's no doubt that they know about it.
Anyone else
it'd be
think
hard
of
not to.
A time and place where someone who's actively suing their former employer for 8 figures of tax dollars can then become a finalist for a job in a larger city that pays more money and has more prestige? That's the foundation for a movie.
Maybe. I think it's a lot simpler than that. I mean, I think that
I don't see how it's more simple than that. $10 million lawsuit claiming she was fired because she was a black woman. Minneapolis has her as a finalist for the job as police chief. What's more simple than that?
And at one point, other places were considering her as well. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there's a reason she's a police chief, and people have considered hiring her. Obviously, at least in a couple places in the United States, it's not like she's incompetent. I don't think that's why she.
Oh,
was
I've never said she was incompetent.
I never said that you said she was.
Yeah, I do not think she's incompetent. Dr. Rochelle Brackney, you watch and listen to this show. I think you're bright, you're intelligent, you know how to play the game. She clearly knows how to play the game, right?
Yeah, or she's got good lawyers that do.
I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and say she knows how to play the game. She got a job in Charlottesville when Charlottesville's become a brand. Her plan was to come to Charlottesville as Charlottesville's a global brand, build some brand equity, and springboard with that brand equity to a larger market. Dallas, a good example of that. She was a finalist there. She's utilizing the brand equity she created and established in Charlottesville, and now is a finalist in Minneapolis. At the same time she's doing all this, she may get a $10 million payday. Let's give props to Brackney, who knows how to play the game. I'm not calling Brackney out. You know who I'm calling out?
Minneapolis?
Yeah. Fool me once.
Shame on you.
Fool me twice.
Shame on me.
Minneapolis. Get ready.
Okay.
Would it not raise red flags if you were leadership in Minneapolis and an active lawsuit was going on?
I'm sure it has. I'm sure they've already considered it, and for whatever reason, they've decided that that's not a big enough issue to stop her from being a candidate for police chief there.
You think they're legitimate with this, or is this a media PR play?
I'm not sure what that would accomplish. I think I don't know anything about the other two candidates, but I mean, her skin color could have something to do with it, especially considering the issues they've had, and it could just be that they don't care.
Viewers and listeners, what are your thoughts? Let's go to the Queen of Jack Jewett, Carol Thorpe. To be fair, Carol Thorpe says, the city and current attorney Lisa Robertson routinely try to get lawsuits dismissed before they go to court, and they typically miserably fail. They are trying to do so here, and it does not reflect on Chief Brackney. That's true. Dr. Terrion Richardson had a wrongful termination lawsuit against Charlottesville City. He chose, after Charlottesville City Hall called his bluff, to drop the suit. City Hall called his bluff. Lisa Robertson called his bluff. Richardson said, you know what? Forget the big bag of money. I don't need it. I'm going to drop my lawsuit. Is that the expectation you have for Charlottesville? I don't get the impression that Brackney's going to drop this one.
I don't think she will either.
I think you have a scorned and bitter
I think most people would be in her place, though.
and angry person here. And I'm basing those comments on her Twitter account, where she continues to tweet about her former employer despite the active $10 million lawsuit. This is all over news in Minneapolis. I'm going to read verbatim from Fox 9 in its report. Dr. Brackney is a 30-year law enforcement veteran. She is currently a visiting professor at George Mason University and was previously the chief of police for Charlottesville, Virginia, and George Washington University. The city notes in the release that Brackney is a, quote, recognized expert in restorative and procedural justice practices in policing community violence exposure and reducing community trauma through relational policing.
Yeah.
Her opponents are Elvin Barron, a 21-year law enforcement veteran who is currently the chief of police for the city of Southfield, Michigan. The city notes as Chief Southfield Police Department, Barron instituted several reforms, including updating the department's use of force policy to make it compliant with national best practices. Before being a police officer, he served for 8 years in the United States Navy as an operations specialist. The third candidate is Brian O'Hara. He's currently the deputy mayor of the city of Newark, New Jersey. O'Hara joined the Newark Police Department in 2001 and rose through the ranks to become a captain. Last year, he was appointed as the city's public safety director, a position in which he oversaw a department with a budget of more than $200 million and a staff of 1,960 employees, including 996 officers and 611 firefighters. I read this and my jaw hit the table. Were you shocked?
No.
Kevin Yancey, you're right, this is interjection, Kevin. It's called a talk show. We offer our opinion, Kevin. That's exactly what we're doing. It is interjection. This is not journalism. We're offering our opinion on a topic. I would say when you sue your former employer and you're looking to hire somebody that is suing their former employer, I would be concerned about hiring that person. That's called common sense. If someone's going to have the, whatever you want to call it, to sue their former employer, and you're a new employer thinking about hiring that person, it should give you pause. And you should ask, could this happen to me? That's common sense. What else is common sense? Is reading the room. And look at how many people have quit the position, quit the department since she was on the job. That's a sign of leadership. This is called common sense. The world we live in is a crazy bananas place. The world we live in, Charlottesville and Albemarle County, school boards are more focused on renaming schools than getting kids to school. Spending taxpayer dollars on rebranding schools and replacing signs and renaming literature and hallways and elementary schools instead of paying bus drivers a living wage to get little Johnny and little Betty to school on time. I got a text message from a mom, Eastern Albemarle County. I'll read it to you. Buck Island Creek. This is the message she got from Albemarle County Public Schools. Parents whose kids ride the bus in Stone Robinson, Walton area. Did you get a call as well? They lost another bus driver to a surrounding county this past Friday. According to a local bus driver, because of unacceptable work conditions and higher pay. Now our children are getting to school late. Some won't make it to school until 12 noon. And some won't get home till 6 p.m. The mom says that's an extremely long day for elementary students. And she said, not all us parents have the ability to drive their kids to school. And we're being forced to leave them standing by the side of a busy highway at 5 o'clock and asking them to walk home. Why in 2022 do we prioritize rebranding schools as opposed to paying school bus drivers a living wage to get the kids to the school on time and to get kids to home on time? This is common sense. And how about this parallel, ladies and gentlemen? Do you see the parallel between the understaffed Charlottesville Police Department and the understaffed Charlottesville school system and its bus driver fleet? We don't pay police officers a fair wage. We don't pay bus drivers a fair wage. The police department has a vacancy rate that is, I'll read it from the press release, 27% vacant. 33 officers. 33 out of 117 positions are empty within the Charlottesville Police Department. And as a result, services are going to have to get cut. The services that are now being cut by the police department are, I'll read verbatim from the press release, due to the continued staffing shortages within the police department, certain calls for service will be directed to an online reporting system. Online reporting options include the following calls for service: fraud, larceny, lost or mislaid property, vandalism, suspicious activity, littering. Officers will continue to respond to emergency calls and crimes in progress. Officers will still respond in person to larcenies of firearms and vehicles. Hey, you know what? City of Charlottesville, you want to go rob somebody? Don't have a gun. You want to steal someone's purse on Market Street? Don't show a gun. Just yank her purse from her. When that person calls in the crime, when that female calls in the crime, when that single mom calls in the crime, it's going to go to an online portal. That purse snatching will stay in a queue. And once the department has time to get through the queue, you might get a phone call back. You want to get away with a crime? Go to the convenience store. Don't show a gun. You can steal the money from the register as long as you don't have a gun. That convenience store is going to call. It'll go to an online portal. It'll sit in a queue. The convenience store, they'll hear from the police eventually. How long does it take before the criminals become aware of this? And you call me crazy? Take a look at California. It's happening right now. You want to commit a crime and you don't want a police officer to show up, do it without a gun. And then you'll get some getaway time, some time to spare, to get to your hideout, to count your money, and to come up with an alibi. Do I blame the police officers? No, I don't blame the police officers. You know who I blame? The people who have attacked the police department. The people who have belittled the police department. The people who have made police officers in the city of Charlottesville feel unwelcomed, disgraced. That's who I blame. And you know who you are. You know who you are. It's the same people that are asking schools to get rebranded and renamed because of sketchy history. Let's not prioritize getting the kids to school, but damn it, that sign makes me angry because of something that happened 150 to 175 years ago. Forget getting the kid to school on time for first period, and forget getting the kid back home on time for homework, bath, and some quality time with their parents. Let's rebrand this school because of something that happened 150 years ago. We'll spend the limited dollars we have. We're not going to use those dollars to pay teachers more money. No. Let's change the signs instead. Let's not give the teachers more money so they stay. Let's not give the bus drivers more money. They're paid $17,000 and a CDL is required. But let's change the sign in front of the school, though. You want to hear some parallels between the police department and the school system? Here's the parallel. A loud minority is influencing the decision-making of school boards, city councils, and boards of supervisors. A loud, socialistic minority is in the ear of the decision makers, and they don't have the courage or fortitude to ignore the noise and do what's right. I don't blame the police officer, and I don't blame the school bus drivers that are sprinting out of Albemarle County in the city of Charlottesville. You know who I blame? The school board. Council leadership. If you're a Charlottesville City police officer, why would you stay in the city? You're paid less than the surrounding counties. You have less perks than the surrounding counties. You're in a volatile political ecosystem where folks in the community look at you as you're the devil. The cost of living is obscene and astronomical. You won't be able to afford to live here. The little money you make, it's going to go away when you have to drive to and from the outer counties to get to work on time or get back from work. I posted this on social media yesterday. This is from a high-level source within the department. Now, these are statistics from March 18th of this year. The numbers are worse. The department has 117 sworn positions. In March, there were 28 vacancies. There's 33 now. 5 more vacancies in not even 6 months of time. In March of this year, 3 of 89 active police officers were homeowners in Seville city limits. 5 of 89 active police officers were renting in Seville city limits. That means 8 of 89 active police officers in March of this year, 8 of 89, that is less than 10%, could afford to live in the city they served. The parallel with the bus driver is clear and obvious. The bus driver is paid less than the police officer. $17,000 and you need a CDL. The bus driver has to ask him or her this question. You're telling me they're going to pay me $17,000? I need a CDL. I'm going to sit in a tin can during COVID. And then once I'm done driving these rugrats to and from school, I'm then going to have to commute 15 to 45 minutes to wherever I live, eroding my margin even more? Who would do that? And ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand the ramifications of this. When you start losing police officers and you start losing school bus drivers, that has vast effects and impacts on the jurisdictions. The school systems quickly start losing student enrollment, and then tax dollars based on enrollment starts falling and dropping. Then the school systems have less dollars to work with, and it creates collateral damage and a snowball effect that is undoubtedly difficult to get ahead of. If you were a mom and dad of financial means, and you found out your son or daughter had to spend an hour to get to school and an hour plus to get home from school, and they're going to be late to school on most days, would you consider pulling your kid from school and putting them in private school? Probably so. Does that then create a public school system of financially margined families and students? Probably so. If you attack the police department at a clip that no one wants to work in the police department, what does that do for the jurisdiction, for real estate values, for crime, for safety, for quality of life, and for confidence? You know what the solution is? The solution is clear-cut and frankly common sense. Don't spend money on rebranding schools. Take the money instead and give it to the bus drivers. The solution is clear-cut. Ignore the noise of the minority socialistic population that's screaming defund the police. And instead, pay the police officers in the city of Charlottesville a wage that's better than Albemarle County, Fluvanna, and Louisa. And watch as the police department starts to get more officers. You want a solution? Ignore the BS and run the government with common sense. You're never going to keep a bus driver in Albemarle County or the city of Charlottesville if Louisa County is paying them more money. Because the cost of living is lower in Louisa, so the money's going to go further if you're a bus driver there. You're never going to keep a Charlottesville police officer for an extended period of time if the outer counties can pay them more money. Because the cost of living is lower and they don't have to deal with the BS of the vocal minority. This is common sense. But the tough part of common sense is it takes courage to execute. You gotta have thick skin. You gotta be willing to hear nastiness from the vocal minority. And you gotta have thick skin, and you gotta have self-esteem, and you gotta have confidence, and you gotta be willing to understand that it comes with the nature of doing what's right. Have the courage to deal with the heat, the nastiness, and the name calling, because you understand the decisions you're making are based on a foundation of common sense. You're never going to win the battle with the outer counties if you don't pay more than the outer counties, because the cost of living in the epicenter of employment is much higher than the outer counties. You'll never win the battle. So stop spending money on pomp and circumstance, and instead spend the same money on stuff that matters. And last I checked, protecting people on the streets matters. And last I checked, getting kids to school matters. So it's about damn time we hold the school board in Charlottesville City and Albemarle County accountable. And when you see the school board members walking around town, you stop them and you say, hey, what the hell are you doing? You're rebranding Kale Elementary to Mountain View instead of giving the bus drivers that are driving the kids to Mountain View a living wage. Hey, what the hell are you doing? You're spending more money on pomp and circumstance in the city of Charlottesville than paying police officers a salary that allows them to live in the city they serve. Hold people accountable. Stop allowing the vocal minority to speak and influence our decision makers. The tough part, it takes courage to do that, because you're going to get a boatload of shit from people. We're going to talk about the Scottsville tire plant in a matter of moments. Regal Cinemas filing for bankruptcy, and the University of Virginia traveling to Champaign, Illinois to face the Fighting Illini, who are a 4.5-point favorite. Kickoff at 4 o'clock on ESPNU. Please go to the two-shot. Judah Wickhauer. Show is yours. I won't interrupt. Anything you want to talk about. On Brackney, the police department, the school bus drivers, the political climate that is a soap opera in the city of Charlottesville, and school board members in Albemarle County and the city of Charlottesville that are undoubtedly being influenced and swayed by a vocal minority. Anywhere you want to go.
Okay. You know, I wish Brackney the best in her bid for Minneapolis police chief. I don't wish her the best in her bid for $10 million from this fine city. I hope that I hope that Charlottesville finds itself and finds a way to make this city attractive to the kinds of people that we need here, the workers that make life keep going. I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't know if it's ever going to become. What's the word I'm looking for? It's never going to become easier to buy a house in Charlottesville, and if pay doesn't make it worthwhile, I think we'll continue losing people. Eventually, we'll be left with, what were we talking about months ago? Charlottesville becoming a white, gentrified place where UVA alumni return because it was such a beautiful place, and they buy up all the property, and they wonder why there's no McDonald's or Dunkin' Donuts or anywhere else to shop.
The McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts?
First two places that came to mind. The point being that you need the lower middle classes to make a city run. And we're talking about rent prices earlier. Talking about what insane levels that it's rising to. It's how much longer are we going to have any bus drivers or cops?
What's the school system going to turn into if the wealthy pull their kids from the school and put them in privates? What's the school system going to turn into when the student population continues to drop and the tax dollars fall because enrollment is down?
Well, eventually they won't need public schools.
That's a long time away, dude. That's not going to happen in your lifetime or my lifetime, and that won't happen in my son's lifetime.
Well,
education is a utility, and if someone runs on a political platform of eradicating public schools, they will lose.
Fair enough.
They will lose. They will not get the popular vote. I just try to look at things through the eyes of a common sense perspective. People ask constantly, what political party do you identify with? I don't identify with any political party. All I do is go about life in a common sense fashion. And common sense would say we need to champion the police. Common sense would say we need to champion teachers. Common sense would say we need to champion bus drivers. Common sense would say we need to champion nurses. Common sense would say we need to champion the service industry. Common sense would say if we don't have nurses, teachers, bus drivers, police, firefighters, and EMTs, then we have a community that is unsafe, a community is lacking education, and we have a community that frankly is only for rich people. Does anybody find it odd that EMTs are so poorly paid? And does anybody find it odd that school bus drivers are so poorly paid? The EMTs are the first to arrive when someone's in distress and they need their life saved. Yet they're one of the worst paid positions in our country. The school bus drivers are the ones that are trusted with driving the next generation. The people in our lives that we hold the dearest are kids, yet they are piss poor paid.
I think you're attacking you're attacking this from the wrong direction, because we all know you can't just keep paying people more money.
You can.
No, you can't.
Dude, you can take the money that you're paying to rebrand the schools and give it to the bus drivers.
Okay, but EMTs, those are often private companies that run emergency medical services.
You could take the money that taxpayers pay to City Hall and use that money and give it to police officers so they have a living wage and can afford to live in the city. This is so obvious. It's about effing money.
I know. But it's more about affordability than it is about money.
They go hand in hand.
Okay, so how are we making things more affordable?
Leadership is allocating the money irresponsibly.
You're saying all across America.
I'm only talking about Charlottesville and Albemarle County.
I know, but this is a nationwide problem.
The
problem is not with pay. The problem is with affordability.
They go hand in hand.
I know, but we all know
the police officer can afford the city if they get paid more money.
Paying everyone more money.
Dude, it's about allocating a fixed and finite amount of money correctly.
Okay.
How are we spending hundreds of thousands of dollars rebranding and renaming parks and tearing down statues? Yet we can't pay our officers a wage for them to live in a city that they serve. What you're saying is right. Whatever the number is, let's call it $200 million, the Charlottesville city budget. Call it $200 million for a year. It's a finite number. Leadership determines how that $200 million is spent, right?
Yeah, that's how it works, I believe.
And if leadership said, I'm going to ignore the noise of the vocal minority and spend the money instead on human capital as opposed to plots of land and decades-old statues and a tourism bus that's parked on the downtown mall with a $18.50 an hour employer, $14.50 an hour employer, whatever they're paid, handing out paper pamphlets to people who walk by, and then literally I watch as the people who get those paper pamphlets from the tourism bus that cost a hell of a lot of money, that's parked on the downtown mall, and then has to be staffed by somebody. The paper pamphlets, paper's a joke in 2022 when people have smartphones. They get the paper pamphlets that cost money and they throw them in the trash as soon as they walk by the bus. I watch it every day. Why don't we just say, hey, 27% of the department in police is understaffed. Let's stop printing paper pamphlets and putting wraps on buses and staffing on a bus on the downtown mall, and let's instead give that money to the officers so they stay on the job. Or Albemarle County and City of Charlottesville School Board. How much time are we spending on renaming schools as opposed to paying bus drivers the money? Is this not common sense?
Some of it.
I mean, it's just so obvious. And look, city council gives the money to the school board, and the school board makes the decisions. The board of supervisors give the money to the school board, and the school board makes the decisions. Before you give the money to the school board, maybe if you're on the board of supervisors or city council, you need to say, hey, we're going to hold some of this money in escrow until we see how it's spent and how we feel it's spent appropriately and accordingly. Does anyone think it's a good idea to have a tourism bus on the downtown mall with 2 people? There's freaking 2 people staffing a tourism bus. Giving out paper pamphlets to people? Who thinks that's a good idea in the era of iPhones? Who thinks paper pamphlets are a great way to describe or promote Charlottesville tourism?
To people that are already here on the downtown mall.
Exactly! They're giving paper pamphlets to tourists who are already in Charlottesville. Did you just hear what Judah said? Who puts the tourism bus on the downtown mall when the tourists are already on the downtown mall and expect that the tourism bus is going to drive incremental revenue? That is stupid.
It may have to do with the fact that they've closed down the visitor center, the welcome center.
Who cares?
People who are looking for maps. I mean, I don't know what they're handing out at the truck you're talking about.
You know the van I'm talking about in the mall, right?
I think I've probably seen it, but I don't get out on the mall very often during the day.
I walk the mall 4 or 5 times a day.
I'm here.
You take breaks, don't you?
Not to walk on the mall.
You don't take 3 15-minute breaks a day?
I take a 15 to take Liza for a walk, and then I take shorter ones later.
Okay. You choose to go to Court Square. I choose to go to the downtown mall. It's no different. We just have a different route. You have a dog. Your dog has to go to the bathroom. You find the closest grassy knoll. I don't have a dog, so I don't have to take my dog to the grassy knoll. I go on the downtown mall, and I study people and human nature and watch what's happening. And I see tourists getting paper pamphlets from 2 people sitting by a bus on the downtown mall. They get the pamphlet and they throw it the hell away. It's a waste of dollars, tax dollars. It's a joke. Give tourists pamphlets about Charlottesville when they're already on the downtown mall. Give me a break. Use the money to bring tourists in by advertising through search engine optimization or targeting select cities like Asheville, Philadelphia, Baltimore. Should I say it again? Minneapolis. And get them to come this way. This is called common sense, Jesus. I'm getting fired up over here. I'm getting fired up. Tourists are on the downtown mall. Let's give them paper pamphlets to tell them about the great things about Charlottesville, even though they're already in Charlottesville. It's laughable. It's laughable. They are already here. They're already here. They're already here. Great tourism advertising campaign. Neil Williamson watching the program, king of content. We love him tremendously. The bus is not a better investment than the transit center. The transit center and the bus are both horrible investments. Whatever the hell that bus cost and whatever the hell it costs to staff that bus, there's literally 2 people on the downtown mall in front of that bus playing on their cell phones. Playing on their cell phones, giving out people paper. Sell the bus, stop staffing it, and take the dollars and putting it into an advertising campaign that targets select cities around the mid-Atlantic and encourage people to take vacations in Charlottesville. This is common sense. This is freaking common sense. It's 1:30, hour into the program already. I have 63 Facebook messages in my account right now after today's show. 63 active messages right now. Literally, hold leadership accountable. If you don't hold leadership accountable, the cause and effect is City of Charlottesville, public school systems will disintegrate and fall in quality. Charlottesville will become a white, wealthy, 10.2 square mile city, and it will creep even further and at a greater clip into Albemarle County. Stop allowing school board members to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars rebranding schools when they can't pay their school bus drivers money. And please, dear Lord, give the teachers, the school bus drivers, and the police officers, and anyone that's on a front line that relies on a city or school paycheck more money. And I'm not even telling you to raise taxes. I'm just telling you to allocate the budget appropriately and with common sense. I'm not telling you to raise taxes. I am anti-raising taxes. I am in favor of taking a budget and allocating it intelligently. All right, I owe you an update on the Scottsville power plant. I'm going to give that to you, then we're going to talk Regal filing for bankruptcy. Regal filing for bankruptcy, dude, we haven't even felt the ripple effect of that. Regal is the movie theater in Stonefield. If you're a locally owned business in the shops of Stonefield, and the second most important tenant in the shops of Stonefield behind Trader Joe's is bankrupt, should you be asking the landlord for better terms or renegotiate your lease?
I don't think they're closing any theaters.
Not yet. They're not closing them yet. What do you think's next? 1 out of 6 movie seats were filled this year. Did you see what I put on my Facebook page?
The article that you sent me?
This is from the New York Times. John Blair sent this my way. JB, I told you I would introduce a new nickname for you. Is John Blair watching? John Blair, you watching? Your new nickname, John Blair, is the King of Knowledge. John Blair, your nickname is the King of Knowledge. Anytime you interact with this program, John Blair, we will forever refer to you now as the King of Knowledge. And I've said this once and I'll say it again. The loss of John Blair to Stanton was a loss for Charlottesville. A man of common sense and reason, the King of Knowledge, John Blair. He sent me this content a couple of days ago about movies. According to the New York Times, 1 out of every 6 movie theater seats was filled this summer, despite the massive success of Tom Cruise's movie Maverick. 1 out of 6, Judah. 1 out of 6.
It's because it was one movie.
1 out of 6 movie seats were filled this summer, despite all of us living a roaring 20s mentality and lifestyle coming out of COVID.
Okay.
Plane airfare, airline travel was at an all-time high. All-time high for airline travel. People were chomping at the bit to spend money and to do stuff outside of quarantine in their crib. Yet no one went to the movies.
Maybe the theater feels a little too much like going back into quarantine. I think another part of the problem is that the movie industry was affected by COVID as well, and so we didn't see the crop of movies that we normally see in most years, and I think that that heavily impacted people going to the theaters because
I disagree.
There were less movies to go to.
And here's why I disagree. I'm going to back it up with facts. This is according to the Motion Picture Association. Attendance at movie theaters in the United States and Canada peaked in 2002. when they sold about 1.6 billion with a B tickets, according to the Motion Picture Association. The big studios and their specialty film subsidiaries released at least 140 films in theaters that year in 2002, with an original drama, Signs, and an original comedy, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, among the top 5 performers in 2002. This year, admissions are expected to fall below 800 million, in part because of the plunging output by the biggest studios, which will release only about 73 films in theaters, with big budget sequels the most attended. Over that same time, the number of movie screens has increased 14% as multiplexes have popped up in the far suburbs and theaters built during a boom in the 90s have limped along in life. As successful as theater companies viewed the summer, they sold 17% of their available tickets, according to the New York Times and research firm Intelligence. If you're a locally owned business and you're in a shopping center that relies on a movie theater as your second largest tenant, and that's 5th Street Station, number 1 is Wegmans, that's Stonefield, number 1 is Trader Joe's. What is the largest draw, you would say, in the downtown mall? I would not say it's violent crowd. I'd probably say it's the aggregation of restaurants and music venues. The downtown mall you could probably take away from this because there's not just one landlord. 5th Street Station has one landlord. Stonefield has one landlord. 5th Street Station and Stonefield are utilizing the movie theater as the second largest tenant or anchor to draw people to the shopping centers. If you're a locally owned business in 5th Street Station and or in Stonefield, and you just heard from the I Love Seville show that 17% of available seats were sold this summer, you have to be thinking with common sense. And the common sense is this: do I renew my lease? Do I renegotiate my lease? Or do I find another place to run my business? And if you're not doing that, you're not going to sustain. You're not going to survive, and you're going to go out of business. Mark it down. Mark it down. Look at the locally owned businesses in Stonefield. How many are surviving? Look at the locally owned businesses in 5th Street Station. How many are surviving? How many locally owned businesses can you name in 5th Street Station, J-Dubs?
Let's see. I believe Kanak is probably local. I don't know that it's a chain. We've got
I would say that's a chain.
You think it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the N unit right there, the restaurant, the end cap.
Yeah.
I can tell you the locally owned businesses. You go first, though.
There's I can't think of the name. Chim, yeah. That's
Mochico,
good. Mm-hmm.
Timberwood Tap House.
That's the one I was missing.
Extreme Pizza. All locally owned businesses.
Extreme Pizza is
a
also
chain,
a chain,
but locally owned.
I would guess the same about Kanak. It may be a chain, but I'm pretty sure it's locally owned.
Or it could be corporate-run store. We know for a fact that Extreme Pizza is owned by a family in Buckingham County because they were a client of ours. They made their money running gas stations in the outer counties.
Yeah.
Picasso Swig didn't make it in 5th Street Station.
No.
Jamie Schwartz, the proprietor of Picasso Swig, friend of the program, certainly had a fair amount of things to say about their landlord, 5th Street Station, did she not? Certainly
No doubt.
did. Certainly did. Talk Stonefield. How many locally owned businesses have failed in Stonefield? More than we can count.
I don't even know how many locally owned businesses have been in there. Most of them.
Elements Hot Yoga just closed. Hunter Smith couldn't make it work.
Right.
Rock Salt couldn't make it work. That's just off the top of my head. You're a locally owned business in 5th Street Station in the shops of Stonefield. You have 3 paths to pursue. You can choose not to renew your lease, you can choose to renegotiate your lease, or you can choose to stay in the same spot. And if you choose option C, the third one, staying in the same spot, you'll die the death of 1,000 cuts. Scottsville. This is unreported, which is shocking to me. And speaking of reporting, how happy are you that Hoss Spencer is now a reporter for the Daily Progress? Hoss Spencer, the one-time editor of The Hook, one of the most talented journalists that we have in Central Virginia, is now churning content left and right for the Daily Progress. And you can make a legitimate argument Hall Spencer is one of the best news reporters the Daily Progress has had in decades. Hall Spencer sent this tweet yesterday at 10:01 a.m. Actually, let me see if he's tweeted anything else. Hall Spencer has written 7 stories for the Daily Progress, and he started working at the newspaper 8 days ago. 7 stories Hall Spencer has written for the DP, and he started working 8 days ago. Hall Spencer, are you listening, Hall Spencer? Someone tag Hall Spencer. Someone get Hall Spencer on the feed. Hall Spencer, you need to listen to this. Hall Spencer, someone tag or text Hall Spencer right now. I'm going to wait 10 seconds so someone can text message Hall Spencer, DM Hall Spencer, and make sure Hall Spencer is hearing this. I'm going to wait 5 more seconds so someone can get Hall Spencer on the show. Halls, I dropped my Daily Progress subscription. I was paying $29.95. I cut the subscription about a week ago because the newsroom was a ghost town of talent. Since you have been on the beat, I've read your stories because I still have a few days left before my subscription expires. The 7 stories you have created, written, covered, published in the Daily Progress over the last 8 days are perhaps enough incentive for me to renew my subscription at $30 a month. Halls, if you were not writing for the Daily Progress, I would not renew my $30 a month subscription with the newspaper. As a result, I'm indicating to you that I would spend $30 a month for content from you if you continue to produce at this clip. I would encourage you to take the content I'm saying right now and utilize it as negotiation leverage with the Daily Progress in some capacity or another. I dropped my subscription because the content was meager and missing. You came on board less than 2 weeks ago and have already churned out 7 pieces of content, and as a result, I'm going to renew my subscription at $30 a month. Tire plant news. This is unreported. Halls, this is a good piece of content for you to cover. This is a good piece of content for you to cover, Halls. Unreported by Legacy Media. The Scottsville Town Planning Commission heard an application for rezoning for the tire plant. The commission called a public hearing for October 3rd and welcomes comments. From 1944 to 2009, the tire plant was the engine of the Scottsville small-town economy. Built first for military needs and later operated by Uniroyal, Michelin, and Hyosung, over 100 people lost their jobs when the factory closed. After years of community planning and studies, the town received a redevelopment application to consider a new chapter in Scottsville's economy and history. Echelon Resources. I'm pretty sure there's an Echelon builder. Let me just do a quick check here. I'm doing this on the fly. Okay, I don't know. Okay, would you say the word echelon, E-C-H-E-L-O-N, is a unique word?
Yeah, it's fairly unique.
Echelon is a unique word, right?
Yeah.
Would you say this is a hell of a coincidence? There's a company in Charlottesville called Echelon Homes. Echelon Homes, LLC. It's a builder. The company that's going after the apartment rezoning is Echelon Resources. There's an Echelon Builders, Echelon Homes, and now the applicant, Echelon Resources for the tire plant. It's a hell of a coincidence. Common sense would say it's the same entity and a different LLC for some corporate protection. Echelon Resources requests a rezoning and special use permit for up to 205 apartments in the factory buildings, which are about 159,000 square feet in size. The height of the factory ceilings enables loft-style floor plans, and sections of roof can be removed for natural light, hallways, and courtyards. Echelon's application includes several proffers and conditions consistent with Scottsville's community goals. They'd like to connect the walkable location from the tire plant to the downtown. $200,000 will be contributed to the town's sidewalks and trail work. For workforce affordable housing opportunities, 20% of the apartments, 20% of the apartments, you're talking over 40 apartments, will be reserved for families earning 60% or less of the area's median income. How is this not being covered? A tire plant that was the epicenter of employment for a 619-person town from 1944 to 2009 is being revitalized potentially by a locally owned business. And they're going to earmark 40-plus units for affordable housing, 60% of AMI. 60% or less. Hawes, cover that story for us, please. Last story, last bit of news. The University of Virginia football team travels to Illinois. They're facing the Fighting Illini. The Fighting Illini are 4.5-point favorites. The game kicks off at 4 o'clock on ESPNU. We will see what this team is about as they travel to a hostile environment. My hope is they come back with a 2-0 record. And if memory serves correct, they have Old Dominion University in week 3 of the season. I'm going to confirm that with you now by going to the schedule page of virginiasports.com. And yes, I am right. ODU next Saturday, Scott Stadium, 2 o'clock kickoff. The Monarchs just beat the Virginia Tech Hokies in the first week of the season. Let's go Tony Elliott. Let's go Brennan Armstrong. Let's go Virginia football. Let's get a win on Saturday. And we'll close the program with this. I have now had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 individual people text me. This doesn't even include the Facebook message, which is becoming unmanageable. Unmanageable, the Facebook message. Message me about Queen Elizabeth is dead.
Damn.
96 years old. Breaking news happened during the show. Queen Elizabeth is dead at 96 years old. Good Lord.
I just saw something about how they weren't sure how well she was doing, and I guess they were right.
They say it comes in threes. They say it comes in threes. Charles is now the king of the United Kingdom. He became king immediately upon the death of his mom. He's been her heir apparent, her heir, since 3 years old. And he's been the longest serving heir to the throne in British history. Upon becoming the sovereign, Charles has the option to take any name he chooses for his reign as king. For example, King George VI's real name was actually Albert. 2 previous monarchs have been called Charles. Charles had already been taking on some of the Queen's engagements this year as her health had become enough of a concern for her to cancel some of her commitments. Both Charles and Prince William had been prioritizing the Queen's diary over theirs. Oh, they say it comes in threes, these deaths. Now we await. Judah Woodcower, Jerry Miller, the I Love CVille show on a Thursday. So long.